So this is very interesting. This is randomly generated, bracket all the way to the end of the game, right? To one single winner. And I did not pick how these would end up. But we are going to, we're going to take a look here. Almost made him a trash cat hand for this. Oh, yeah, that's true. We were going to do that. I have not been doing well, so that would have been a fun little thing. Maybe we'll do that another time. This is our, like, play-in round, and there are a lot of people. Let me show you this. I did not generate this. This is random. Demetrius versus Maru. Dwarf versus Krobus. Kent versus Vincent. All right. Let's start from the top, though. So, we have Bouncer versus Alex. So let's think about these guys. We got the Bouncer, and we got Alex. So I think this is a fairly even fight. Alex is pretty athletic, a little bit younger. The Bouncer, you cannot move past him. He is the only person in the game that you cannot squeeze past. Or I guess I shouldn't say that. He is a person that you cannot squeeze past like you can with most people. Does that mean that he is an immovable object and Alex is like an unstoppable force? I don't actually know that joke, but those are my thoughts. Alex is very physically fit, but I think Bouncer is like, his job is to be intimidating, strong, and scary. Like, the only way you get out of there is not by like pushing. You have to play the game. I'm gonna say, okay, yeah, let's see what people are saying here. Dan again says Bouncer for sure. Argon says, I think Bouncer would thrash him in the end. Alex would get absolutely milli-rocked. I've never heard that phrase. Alex would get blasted. Bouncer's got nothing but bombs. It's tough. It's tough. I think I'm going to give this one to the Bouncer, though. Bouncer. I can type, I swear. Okay, I think that one makes sense. You know, Alex is pretty fit. But I think the Bouncer literally carries bombs in his pocket, and to me, that seems like a win. So we're gonna go with that. I think we're gonna say goodbye to Alex. I am on the wrong layer. We're gonna say goodbye to Alex. Later, dude. Alex only deadlifts, no fighting skill. Bouncer might just win this. I'm kind of concerned that Bouncer's gonna sweep. To be honest, I'm a little worried about it. So next up here, we have Leo and Penny. So I think there's an argument to be made that Leo is pretty scrappy. He's lived alone for a long, long time. And I think that gives him kind of an advantage in like survival skills. Whereas Penny is a very like kind and considerate person. I'm not really sure that Penny has what it takes to like go for the throat. Where Leo, I think, he's seen like how birds operate. He's probably seen birds eating things. I'm gonna guess for him, he's a little disassociated with like murder. But I have a feeling that Leo would probably take this one. Yeah. So we're gonna go ahead. We're gonna say goodbye to Penny. It just does not make sense. I don't think she was meant to go any further than this. However, here is a matchup: Pam versus Jazz. And here's the thing. Jazz is terrifying. Jazz has probably killed before. And Pam probably also has. But are we giving Pam the bus in this? Or are we just getting her drunk and letting her loose in the ring? And either way, can Jazz stand against Pam? I think that one's going to be tough. I think this one is going to be hard because I could see Jazz coming through with, like a homemade glass knife and just surprising Pam. But I could also see Pam in a drunken rage just taking a bottle to Jazz's head, and that's the end. So I think we're actually going to put this one up to a quick vote. All right, I think we got to cut this off because otherwise we're just not going to have any time. So Jazz is going to take the win here. Very surprising. I thought Pam would be a contender, but that's what happens sometimes. You get put up against someone early in the game, and you just never know what's going to happen. So Jazz goes on. How does Emily beat Mr. Key, who can teleport, who can go into the Skull Caverns with no apparent danger, who can warp time and space? I just don't see it. I don't see any world where Emily wins against Mr. Key unless she like traps him in her dream world. But like he could just use his like horse flute or something and get out of there. I don't know. He's not a horse, but whatever. I think Mr. Key's got to win this one. This is interesting. So we have George here. Doesn't have a lot of mobility. Probably doesn't have a lot of strength. And then we have Gus, who works for usually 13 hours a day, constantly on his feet, always moving around. He's a little heavier, so maybe he kind of carries his weight. I don't know if he would maybe stumble, but I just don't see him losing to George because George cannot match him in mobility. Like, just cannot. I just don't think he could win. Could George kill Gus if he had a gun? Maybe. But George was a miner, you know. Maybe he would have some dynamite. Would he have some dynamite? I don't know. But as he is right now, stuck inside, talking about how he can't really like get to different places, Gus could just stay out of his reach, I think. I think Gus has got to win this one. George in his prime, maybe, yeah. George was probably a pretty strong guy. George runs over Gus's toes and subsequently crushes him. George wheels himself. Yeah, that's totally fair. That's totally fair. In a fight, though, if he's wheeling himself, then his hands are spoken for. Dude's going to be jacked. He does not look very jacked. This is not the look of a man who is ripped out of his mind. I don't know about you guys. George could try to roll him over, but I feel like Gus could just move. What's with the brackets? Yeah, it's March Madness. We're having a Stardew Valley Fight Club to the death. I get what you guys are saying, that George would have great upper body strength. I just don't think it's going to matter. I don't think Gus is somebody that would just stand around. Like, he obviously can get himself moving. Like, he is a working guy. He's always on his feet from the beginning of the day until the end. George, I'm sorry. I think a good argument was made for his physical strength, but at the end of the day, Gus is gonna walk away with this one. All right, Jody versus Henchman, and let me remind you, we already had Bouncer, but this is Henchman. This is Henchman. Look at this little guy. Look at this little guy. So, do you think that Jody could stand up against this creepy little man's? I'm just not sure. You ever watch Jerry? I don't know. So I think Henchman here. Jody's got some like she does have some anger issues. She does get pretty upset with Sam and potentially with you. But Henchman is truly horrific. What a lad. I feel like Jody would destroy Henchman. I mean, you can distract Henchman with mayonnaise. Too sluggish from the void mayo. Henchman because he bites. Henchman eek. She's a tough mom. Jody would run in a heartbeat. No, he's a roadblock for a reason. Ankle biter. Jody. Henchman. Jody's moving forward. I think that's interesting. I might not have picked that, but I think you guys made some really good arguments, so I think it makes sense. I know what you're thinking. Well, I don't know what you're thinking, but here's what I am thinking. Evelyn versus Marlon. Let's pull them up real quick. We have Marlon here. We got Marlon. All right. He's got one eye. He's got a bad leg. He's not doing so hot, you know. He's getting up there, but he probably knows a thing or two. We got Evelyn. Can't really hear anymore. She can't really see anymore. Former explorer, and Granny is just a baker. Cookie sneak attack gives you a sugar coma. I think I gotta go with Marlon here. I think it just makes sense. I think there's nothing that Evelyn does or says that makes me think that she'd be capable of a fight to the death. Marlon can give you... Yeah, Marlon has all the weapons. There you go. Marlon could pull out, like, a galaxy hammer just because. Yeah, I just think it makes sense. Now, Kent versus Vincent. And I love this matchup because Kent would destroy Vincent. Let's look at Kent real quick. Let's check out his dialogue. Does he even say his son's name? Are you friends with my son? You probably know him better than I do. That's probably about Sam. He never even mentions Vincent. Kent will break him in half. Kent wins. Vincent looks like a biter. He might try, but look at this guy. Look at him. Does he even know if Vincent is his son? Well, that is quite the question. Maybe we'll dive into that another time. Kent probably has an actual body count. Well, he's about to, because I think Kent's going a long way. Oh, he's up against Willie, though. Well, we'll see. All right, here's my favorite part of this bracket, though. The very bottom here, we have Demetrius versus Maru. Now, Robin has said that Demetrius has created fireballs in their home. On the other hand, Maru is capable of assembling sentient life. So, I mean, what's the play here? You know, who's gonna take this one? I think Maru takes this one. When Demetrius is working in his lab, he's working with flasks. But when Maru is working in her room, she is like physically working. She's probably got biceps for days. Probably tries. I don't know the rest of the muscles, but shoulder ones too. Yeah, I gotta go with Maru for this one. I think it's Maru. Let's see what chat says. Maru, Naruto. Maru, Demetrius would never harm. Molotov cocktails aren't hard to make. Well, that's a statement. I would probably... That is something to say. You're not wrong. Murderbot for the win. Yep, okay. All right. Maru would feel nothing. And then this one, I love. I love that these guys were put together at the very end here. We got Dwarf and we got Krobus. The enemies for life. The enemies to lovers. We got Krobus and Dwarf. In my heart of hearts, I would love for Krobus to win, but Dwarf has access to an unlimited amount of bombs. I don't know. Like, can you... I think Dwarf has, like, artillery, and Krobus has fish, and teleport thing. I just don't think that Krobus could beat Dwarf. As much as I love Krobus, how does Krobus compete? How does Krobus compete with Dwarf? Dwarf has things that cause damage, and Krobus sells fish. Stardrop, Void Egg, Sign of the Vessel. What's he gonna do? Just up down a fireplace? I think Dwarf just wins. I think Dwarf just wins this one, and I don't care what you guys say. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Krobus. All right, Sam versus Bouncer. Does anyone think that Sam would beat Bouncer? He can skateboard and he can play the Game Boy Pocket. I don't see this happening. Goodbye, Sam. Clint versus Marnie. Now, I was really hoping that it would be Lewis versus Marnie here, but I do have to say, I want to give this one to Clint. If you stick around after he closes, you can see him actually working the forge. He cracks the geodes for you. I think that he has... I think he's probably got some muscles going on there. So, anyway, Clint versus Marnie. I think Clint takes this one pretty easily because he works in a job that's very physically demanding, as does Marnie. The difference, though, is that we see Clint actually doing that work, where we don't with Marnie. Marnie wouldn't show up for the battle. It's on a Monday. Well, that's a fantastic point. Leah versus Leo. Now, Leah does a lot of woodworking, which means she probably has access to some pretty dangerous tools. Leo is a bird boy, and probably has no concept of the law. I think he would just as easily kill her as give her a hug. So I think this is a tough one, to be honest. Would Leah be prepared? Would she be ready for this? I think she would. I think she would. I don't think that Leah would let this little guy roll up on her. I think she would put her little carving knife just straight through his eye, to be honest. Leo has that parrot swarm. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. But Leo would have to find Leah, and I can never get her out of her dang hut. Leah clocked her ex. Oh, that's true. She also has, like, a little bit of a temper. Interesting. Interesting. I think I'm going to go with Leah. Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Leah here. I think it just makes sense. So let's get... I'm sorry, Leo. Your time here is up. All right, here's one we've been waiting for. Elliot versus Jazz. Jazz wins, right? Jazz wins, right? Is there any way that Elliot wins this one? Jazz is someone I would not want to meet in a dark alley, to be honest. I think it would be pretty scary. What's Elliot going to do? Right at her? Exactly. Elliot has a glass jaw. 100%. Okay. Robin versus Caroline. So this one's tough because Caroline would absolutely drug Robin during aerobics the week before the fight. So, like, would Caroline get Robin so sick from her weird tea that Robin wouldn't be able to fight? Because Robin's probably pretty tough, you know? She does some very active work where Caroline doesn't. But Caroline is, like, manipulative, and she has access to poison. I think we'll bring Robin forward. It seems pretty unanimous in chat. And I didn't have strong feelings on this one, so Robin is going to keep going, and let's just turn Caroline off here. All right, I'm looking at this one, and I'm just going to go ahead. And do this. Haley versus Gus. I think I would probably go Gus here, although Haley could surprise Gus. Maybe, take a picture with her flash on and blind him. She's a dirty fighter. Haley probably pulls hair and fights with nails. Okay, I can see that. And Gus is not necessarily, he wasn't a strong win, even over George, which I thought he should have been. Maybe I'm not giving Haley enough credit. Maybe she's scrappier than I think. I always think of her as, she's going to go shopping and she doesn't want to get her hands, dirty or whatever. But by the end of the game, she's used to that farm life. Maybe we take Haley here. This one's got to be Linus. There's no way Lewis he could not compare. Linus could be in the trees and Lewis would never know. Linus is the ultimate guerrilla warfare fighter. Linus might end up giving Kent a run for his money. No, they're going to be in different brackets here. Never mind. This will be a tough one. I see these guys as being close friends in my mind. In my world, in my canon, Linus and Marlon used to traverse the mines together. This would be a tough fight. They're going to know each other's strengths and weaknesses. Willie versus Kent. Kent, right? It's got to be Kent. Willie was a pirate, so... Well, not really, but Willie might have had a pirate for a father. I think Kent is going to win this one. I think Kent is terrifying. I'm really worried about what Kent would do to everyone in this town. I'm going to move Kent. I'm going to take Kent. All right, Gil versus the Wizard. Gil literally never moves from his chair. Gil does not leave his rocking chair, and the Wizard can teleport. So, yeah, it's got to be the Wizard, right? There's no way. Gil, look at him. He has one sprite. He's got 2 lines of dialogue. He does sometimes go to the movie theater, which I think is pretty funny. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just skipped Dwarf Sebastian. There's just no way. There's no way, right? Yeah. All right. So, back up to the top. Bouncer versus Clint. We've been giving Bouncer a pretty heavy weight. We think Bouncer's pretty tough. I think Bouncer versus Clint is it's a scrap. It's a fight. I think Bouncer's gonna win that one though. Sebastian would throw some D20s down as Caltrops. If Sebastian's throwing D20s and not D4s down as Caltrops, then he does not understand D&D. Let me tell you. Leah versus Jazz, though. So this one's interesting because we got Jazz. We have Leah. Where is Leah? Oh, yeah, up here. We have Jazz. We have Leah. They've got anxiety. True. I'll tell you which one scares me more. It's Jazz. Jazz scares me more than Leah. Leah has a bit of a temper, though, and she does a lot of work at home. But Jazz, there is no life in her eyes. She could watch the entire universe fade from existence, and she would just keep skipping rope with single-minded determination. She wouldn't even notice that the heat death of the universe had occurred. I just don't think there's any humanity left in this child. I just think Jazz is yeah. Moving along, we got Robin versus Abigail. So let's remember, in the last round, Robin killed Caroline. And I think Abigail is coming in with that knowledge. And I think Abigail is going to want to get some vengeance here. But the thing is, is she strong enough to take revenge on Robin for the death of her mother? I don't think she is. I think Robin wins this one. I'm sorry, Abigail stands. She's done here. Okay, Mr. Key versus Haley. Mr. Key versus Haley. So I think Mr. Key. Mr. Key would absolutely kill Haley, and it would be a joke. I see Mr. Key versus Jazz in the semifinals, personally. But let's keep moving. Harvey and Jody. Jody, 10 times out of 10. 10 times out of 10. Harvey did not deserve to be here. If Harvey wouldn't have been seated in, he would have never won. He would have been up against Jody from the beginning. Linus versus Marlon. Now, this one's tough. I think I want to go Linus here. And specifically, I think I want to go Linus because I think Linus and Marlon knew each other very well, and Linus and Marlon probably fought together in the past. And I think Linus, knowing Marlon's weaknesses, and the fact that Marlon is down essentially a working leg and down one eye, Linus has the upper hand there. So I think we're going to take Linus. Marlon does have all the weapons, and that is true. But I think Linus knows that. I think Linus knows his tricks from being together for so long, and I don't think Marlon could step to him with one eye and with a bum leg. Linus will do anything to survive. Kent versus Wizard. Now, this one's tough. Kent probably has access to some superior weaponry, but the Wizard literally can do magic. I'm going to let you guys decide that one. I'm going to check the comments, and I'm going to go down here to Maru versus Dwarf. And I'm thinking I'm going to take Dwarf here. And the reason I'm taking Dwarf is because Maru is relying on her murder robot, right? But the thing about that is the dwarves are very advanced technologically. They have computers where no one else in the valley really does. I think the dwarf would probably understand that. And with superior firepower, I think the dwarf would overcome Maru's robot. I just think Dwarf wins over Maru, even with the handicap that Maru has a killer robot. Dwarf has the firepower and the thirst for blood. Oh, fully believe there were wizards in the war. That's a good point. Wizard Kent with the PTSD. Wizard. I think I'm going to go Kent. It was a little more... You guys were leaning a little more towards the wizard here. But I think that this comment from Argon Matrix, I fully believe that there were wizards in the war. Kent probably has some experience. I like that. I like the idea that Kent knows about fighting the supernatural. So we're going to take Kent with us. This is a tough one because the bouncer has been so strong so far, so physically strong, and Jazz has been an absolute terror on the battlefield. And I think Jazz will continue to frustrate and continue to dominate. I just don't think Bouncer can stand up against the little terror. I think Jazz is going to keep moving forward, and I think she's going to do it leaving a trail of blood behind her. Now, this one is tough because Mr. Key wins. Moving along. Jody versus Linus. This one is... I think Jody had kind of a weak path to get here. I think Linus has had a lot of tough fights. He had Marlon, Oh, never mind. No, he didn't. I think Linus takes Jody, and I think he buries her in a shallow grave. Canton Dwarf. Now, so far we've been giving a dwarf a pass, but the thing about that is Kent also has access to bombs, and Kent has a little bit more like tactical knowledge. He's been involved in actual combat. So we're going to bring Kent forward here. But I think this one would be tough, and I don't think Kent would be coming into it in a good state. But the real question here, Jazz versus Mr. Key. Is Mr. Key as terrified of Jazz as I am? Or is Mr. Key related to Jazz? Or does Mr. Key think Jazz is a worthy successor? We'll think about that. I'm going to go down here to Linus versus Kent. I think Linus takes Kent because, like I said earlier, Linus is the ultimate guerrilla fighter. He knows how to fight in the weeds. He can be anywhere at any time. He could be hidden in the trash. He could be in the bushes. He could be in the trees. And I think Linus is going to take Kent. Mr. Key is Jazz's dad. Jazz would be smart enough to beat his puzzles. Mr. Key would know Jazz's weakness. Ooh, interesting. I think Jazz and Mr. Key would be a tough fight. I think Jazz. I'm taking Jazz to the end with Linus. I'm just terrified of her. She's frightening. And this is where we end up. Mr. Key versus Kent is a tough one. I'm not sure where I would go for the match there, but Jazz versus Linus. I think Linus will finally meet his match in a person that has no soul. This whole time he's been looking at everything in the world and redeeming everyone he meets, but I just don't think Jazz is redeemable. I think Jazz is the ultimate winner of Stardew Valley Fight Club and ends up being the person who destroys the valley. There's something evil hidden behind those eyes. I agree, Rin. I actually don't know if there's anything behind those eyes.